The millionaire thought he had everything under control until his newborn's cries shattered his perfect world and left him completely helpless. When the mysterious cleaning lady walked through his door, she had no idea that one gentle touch would change 3 lives forever. But what happened next would tear apart his elite social circle and force him to choose between his reputation and his heart. The mother-in-law's secret phone call offering money to make her disappear was just the beginning, because when love crosses social boundaries, someone always pays the price. What this grieving widower discovered about real family would shock everyone who thought they knew him, and the truth about why his baby only stopped crying for her would leave you speechless. If you're watching this incredible story unfold, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're from, because love like this can happen anywhere, but it takes real courage to fight for it. The house was full of noise. Baby Jack's cries bounced off the walls of the nursery like angry birds trapped in a cage. Ethan Hale sat in the rocking chair, his son pressed against his chest, and felt like he was failing at the most basic thing in the world. "Shh," he whispered for the 100th time that day. "Please, buddy, please just stop for a minute." But Jack kept crying. His tiny fists punched at the air. His face was red and scrunched up like an angry little tomato. Ethan looked around the room and saw the mess of his new life scattered everywhere. Empty bottles on the changing table, burp cloths thrown over the chair arms, a clean swaddle still folded on the dresser because he couldn't figure out how to use it right. 2 weeks. It had been 2 weeks since Jack came home from the hospital. 2 weeks since Sarah died. 2 weeks of Ethan trying to be a dad while his heart felt like it was breaking into smaller pieces every day. His phone buzzed on the side table. A text from the cleaning agency. Temp worker arriving at 4 p.m. Tiana Brooks, 1-day service as requested. Ethan looked at the clock. 3:30. He'd almost cancelled 3 times today. The house was a disaster, but having a stranger see him like this felt too hard. What would she think when she walked in and found him crying along with his baby? Jack's wails got louder. Ethan stood up and started walking around the room again, bouncing gently like the nurse had shown him. Nothing worked. Nothing ever worked. The doorbell rang. Ethan stopped walking. Jack kept screaming. For a moment, Ethan thought about pretending no one was home. But he'd already paid the deposit, and honestly, the house needed help. He needed help, even if it was just someone to clean while he figured out how to keep a tiny human alive. He walked downstairs with Jack still crying in his arms. Through the front door's glass panel, he could see a young black woman standing on his porch. She wore jeans and a simple blue t-shirt, and she had a large tote bag over her shoulder. She looked calm, like baby screams didn't bother her at all. Ethan opened the door. "You must be Tiana. I'm sorry about the noise. He's been like this all day." "Don't worry about it," she said, and her voice was warm and steady. "Babies cry. It's what they do best." She stepped inside and set down her tote bag. "I'm Tiana Brooks. Mind if I wash my hands and then take a look at those bottles before I start cleaning?" "The bottles?" Ethan bounced Jack harder. "Yeah, sure. Kitchen's this way." Tiana followed him into the kitchen, where dirty bottles covered most of the counter space. Jack's cries echoed off the tile walls, making everything feel more frantic. "How old is he?" Tiana asked, rolling up her sleeves. 2 weeks yesterday." She nodded and turned on the sink faucet. "First baby?" "Yeah." Ethan's voice cracked a little. "My wife. She died when he was born. So it's just us now, and I don't know what I'm doing." Tiana's hands stopped moving for just a second. When she looked at him, her eyes were soft but not pitying. "I'm real sorry for your loss. That's got to be so hard." "Thanks." Ethan shifted Jack to his other shoulder. "I just can't figure out what he wants. He's fed. He's clean. I've tried everything." Tiana finished washing her hands and dried them on a dish towel. "Sometimes babies just need a different touch, different rhythm. May I?" Ethan stared at her. "You want to hold him? Only if you're okay with it. I've got 3 younger brothers and a sister. Been around crying babies my whole life." Ethan hesitated. Jack was his responsibility, his son. But the crying was driving him crazy, and nothing he did helped. "Okay," he said finally. "Maybe just for a minute." Tiana reached out and took Jack with careful, confident hands. She settled him against her shoulder, one hand supporting his head, the other patting his back in a slow, steady rhythm. "Hey there, sweet baby," she said quietly. "You're having a hard day, aren't you?" The change was instant. Jack's screams turned into hiccups, then sniffles, then nothing. Silence. Complete Beautiful silence filled the kitchen. Ethan froze, his breath caught in his throat. He stared at Tiana holding his son, and for the first time in 2 weeks, the house wasn't full of crying. "How did you?" he started, then stopped. His voice came out like a whisper. Tiana smiled, still swaying gently with Jack. Sometimes they just need to feel safe. Skin contact, steady breathing, calm energy. Your little guy's been feeling all your stress. Babies pick up on that. Jack made a soft cooing sound against Tiana's shoulder. His tiny fist uncurled and grabbed onto her t-shirt. Ethan sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. "I've been doing everything wrong." "No, you haven't," Tiana said firmly. "You've been grieving and trying to take care of a baby at the same time. That's about the hardest thing anyone can do. Give yourself some credit." She kept swaying with Jack, who seemed perfectly content now. The afternoon sun came through the kitchen window, making everything look golden and peaceful. For the first time since Sarah died, Ethan felt like he could breathe. "I should probably get started on the cleaning," Tiana said after a few minutes. "But maybe you want to try holding him again first? See if he stays calm with you now that he's settled down." Ethan nodded and stood up. Tiana passed Jack back to him, and the baby stayed quiet. His eyes were droopy now, like he might actually fall asleep. "Rock him gentle-like," Tiana said. "Not too fast. Think of it like dancing to slow music." Ethan tried to copy her rhythm. Jack's breathing stayed even and peaceful. "There you go," Tiana said. "You're getting it." She picked up her tote bag and pulled out cleaning supplies. "I'll start upstairs and work my way down. You just focus on your boy." Ethan watched her head toward the stairs, still hardly believing what had just happened. Jack was quiet in his arms, actually settling into sleep. The panic that had been sitting on his chest all day finally started to lift. By the time Tiana came back downstairs an hour later, Jack was fully asleep. Ethan had moved to the living room couch, and he was just sitting there holding his son and marveling at the quiet. "How's he doing?" Tiana asked softly. "Still sleeping. I'm almost afraid to move." She smiled. "Want me to show you how to put him down? There's a way to do it so he doesn't wake up right away." "Please." They went upstairs to the nursery, which Tiana had somehow cleaned and organized while they were downstairs. The scattered burp cloths were folded neatly. The bottles were gone from the changing table. Everything looked calm and peaceful. "Lay him down real slow," Tiana said, standing next to the bassinet. "Keep your hand on his chest for a minute, so he still feels your touch." Ethan did exactly what she said. Jack stirred a little but didn't wake up. "Now step back slow and quiet." They tiptoed out of the nursery. Ethan closed the door most of the way, leaving just a crack so he could hear if Jack woke up. "I can't believe he's actually sleeping," Ethan said when they got back to the kitchen. "He was probably tired. All that crying wears them out." Tiana checked her watch. "I should finish up downstairs and then head out. You probably want to grab some rest while he's down." But Ethan didn't want her to leave yet. For the first time in 2 weeks, his house felt peaceful instead of chaotic. "How did you learn all that?" "About babies, I mean." "Practice," Tiana said, wiping down the kitchen counters. "My mom worked 2 jobs when I was growing up. I took care of my brothers and sister most nights. You learn what works and what doesn't." "Do you have kids of your own?" "No, not yet. I'm just the temporary help today." She folded the dish towel and hung it on the oven handle. "But your little guy's sweet. You're lucky." Ethan watched her pack up her cleaning supplies. Lucky wasn't a word he'd use to describe his life right now, but sitting in his quiet, clean house with his sleeping baby upstairs, he could almost see what she meant. "Tiana," he said as she picked up her tote bag. "Thank you. Not just for the cleaning, for everything." She smiled. "You're welcome. You're going to be just fine, you know. Being a dad is hard, but you'll figure it out." The front door closed behind her with a soft click. Ethan stood in his clean kitchen and listened to the wonderful sound of nothing. No crying, no chaos, just peace. Then, from upstairs, Jack started to fuss. By the time Jack was fully crying again, Ethan felt the panic rising in his chest. He went upstairs and picked up his son, trying to copy the swaying rhythm Tiana had used. It worked for about 2 minutes before Jack started screaming again. Ethan tried everything he could remember. He changed Jack's diaper even though it was clean. He made a bottle even though Jack had just eaten. He walked around the nursery, then the hallway, then downstairs to the living room. Nothing worked. The crying got louder and angrier. By 10 o'clock that night, Ethan was sitting on the couch holding Jack and crying himself. He felt stupid and helpless, and completely lost. Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah would have been perfect at this. But Sarah was gone, and it was just him and Jack, and he was failing. His phone sat on the coffee table with Tiana's number on the screen. The cleaning agency had sent her contact info in case he had questions about the service, but he couldn't call her. She wasn't a babysitter. She was just someone who'd cleaned his house. Still, the memory of Jack's instant calm in her arms made his chest ache. Maybe. Before he could talk himself out of it, Ethan picked up the phone and sent a text. "Hi, this is Ethan from today. I know this is weird, but do you think you could come back tomorrow evening? Just for a little while? I'll pay whatever you think is fair. I don't know what I'm doing, and you made it look so easy." He hit send before he could delete it. 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed with a reply. "I'm really just a house cleaner, not a nanny, but I'll think about it. How's Jack doing tonight?" Ethan looked down at his still crying son. "Not great. I'm sorry for bothering you." "You're not bothering me. Hang in there. Try putting him skin to skin on your chest and play some white noise from your phone. Sometimes that helps." Ethan had no idea what skin to skin meant, but he was willing to try anything. He pulled off his t-shirt and laid Jack against his bare chest, then found a white noise app on his phone. It took 20 minutes, but Jack finally quieted down. "Holy cow," Ethan whispered. "It actually worked." He texted Tiana back. "The white noise thing worked. Thank you." "Good. Get some rest." But even with Jack finally asleep on his chest, Ethan stayed awake, thinking about the way Tiana had held his son. The calm confidence in her movements, the way she'd talked to Jack like he was a real person worth listening to. Maybe she was just a house cleaner, but she was also the only person who'd been able to help Jack in 2 weeks of trying. The next morning, Jack woke up at 6 a.m. screaming again. Ethan tried the skin-to-skin thing, but this time it didn't work as well. He managed to get Jack to take a bottle, but the crying started again as soon as he finished eating. By noon, Ethan felt like he was going crazy. He kept thinking about calling Tiana, but he didn't want to seem desperate or weird. She'd said she'd think about coming back, but she hadn't promised anything. At 2 o'clock, his doorbell rang. Ethan opened the door with Jack crying in his arms, expecting to see a delivery person or maybe his neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Instead, Tiana stood on his porch with her tote bag and a small smile. "Thought you might need some help," she said. "But let's be clear about something first. I'm not a nanny, and I don't want anyone thinking I am. I clean houses, but I can maybe show you a few things about babies while I'm here." "Yes," Ethan said immediately. "Thank you. Come in." This time, when Tiana took Jack, she talked Ethan through what she was doing. "See how I'm supporting his head, and I'm keeping my movements slow and steady. Babies don't like sudden changes." Jack quieted down just like before. "Now watch how I swaddle him." Tiana grabbed the blanket from the couch and laid it out flat. "You want it snug but not too tight, like a hug that lasts." She wrapped Jack up like a tiny burrito, leaving just his head poking out. Jack's eyes went wide for a second, then started to close. "He looks so peaceful," Ethan said. "Swaddling makes them feel safe, like they're still in the womb." Tiana handed Jack back to Ethan. "Now you try rocking him." Ethan took his swaddled son and tried to copy Tiana's gentle rhythm. Jack stayed calm. "I think I'm starting to get it," Ethan said. "You are. It just takes practice." They spent the next hour going through the basics: how to hold Jack for feeding, the right temperature for his bottle, how to burp him without making him spit up all over everything. "Most important thing," Tiana said as they sat at the kitchen table with Jack sleeping in Ethan's arms, "is to stay calm yourself. Babies can feel your stress. The more worried you get, the more upset he gets." "That makes sense. I've been pretty much panicking for 2 weeks straight." "You're doing better than you think. First-time dads usually struggle, and you've got extra stuff to deal with." Her voice was gentle. "It's okay to not know everything right away." When Jack woke up an hour later and started to fuss, Ethan tried the techniques Tiana had shown him. It took a few minutes, but he managed to calm Jack down on his own. "Look at that," Tiana said, smiling. "You did it." Ethan felt a burst of pride so strong it almost made him dizzy. "I actually did it. Told you. You're going to be fine." As evening came, Tiana started packing up her things. "I should head home. You seem like you've got things under control now." Ethan looked around his peaceful kitchen, then at Jack sleeping quietly in the portable bassinet. He felt better than he had in weeks, but the thought of going back to struggling alone made his stomach tight. "Tiana," he said as she picked up her tote bag. "Would you maybe consider coming back, just for a few more evenings? I could pay you whatever you think is fair." She paused, her hand on her bag strap. "I told you, I'm not a nanny, I know, but you're good with him, and I'm still learning. Just until I get the hang of things?" Tiana was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because." She looked around the kitchen, then back at him. "Because people might get the wrong idea. About why I'm here, about what this is." Ethan frowned. "I don't understand." "Look around, Ethan. This is a nice house in a nice neighborhood. You're clearly well off. I'm a black woman who cleans houses for a living. People see me coming and going in the evenings. They're going to talk. So, let them talk. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they'll be talking about." Tiana's voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. "I've got a reputation to protect, and boundaries matter." From the bassinet, Jack made a small whimpering sound. Both Ethan and Tiana looked over at him. "He needs you," Ethan said quietly. "I don't know why, but he calms down for you in a way he doesn't for anyone else, even me." Tiana looked at Jack, and her expression softened. "It's not that he needs me specifically. He just needs consistency, calm energy, someone who knows what they're doing." Jack's whimpering got a little louder. "Please," Ethan said, "just for a few days. Until I get better at this, I'll make sure everyone knows it's professional, scheduled hours, proper pay, whatever you need." Tiana walked over to the bassinet and gently patted Jack's chest. He settled back down immediately. "3 evenings," she said finally. 6 to 10 p.m. We'll do a schedule, and we'll stick to it. And if anyone asks, I'm helping you learn baby care, not living here or anything like that." "Thank you," Ethan said, relief flooding through him. "Really, thank you. Let me be clear, though. This is temporary. I'm not a nanny, and I'm not looking to be one long term. I'm just helping you get through the hardest part." "I understand." Tiana pulled a small notebook from her tote bag and wrote down some numbers. "Here's what I charge for evening work. Fair?" Ethan looked at the number and nodded. It was more than reasonable. "Okay then. I'll see you tomorrow at 6. She paused at the door. "And Ethan, you're doing better than you think. Don't be so hard on yourself." After she left, Ethan sat in his quiet kitchen with Jack sleeping peacefully nearby. For the first time since Sarah died, he felt like maybe he could actually do this. Maybe he could be the dad Jack needed. He found a sticky note and wrote, "Thank you," in careful letters, then stuck it to the refrigerator where Tiana would see it tomorrow. The next morning started better. Ethan woke up before Jack did, which felt like a small miracle. He managed to give Jack a bottle and change his diaper without any major disasters. When Jack started to fuss around mid-morning, Ethan tried the swaddling technique Tiana had shown him. It worked. Not perfectly, but it worked. By the time 6 p.m. came around, Ethan actually felt like he'd had a decent day. Jack had cried, but not constantly. They'd managed to walk around the block in the stroller. Ethan had even eaten lunch. When Tiana arrived, she smiled at the sticky note on the fridge. "How was your day?" "Better. Not perfect, but better. That's what we're aiming for. Not perfect, just better." She washed her hands at the sink. "Ready for bath time?" "He gets a bath every day. Every other day is fine, but it's good to get in a routine. Plus, most babies love warm water. It reminds them of being in the womb." Tiana showed him how to set up the little baby bathtub, how to check the water temperature, how to support Jack's head while washing him. Jack did seem to love the water. He made little cooing sounds and kicked his tiny legs. "Look at him," Ethan said, amazed. "He's actually happy. See? You're figuring it out." After the bath, they practiced the side-lying hold for feeding. Jack latched onto his bottle better than he had in days. "Tell me about your brothers and sister," Ethan said as Jack ate. "You said you took care of them?" "Miguel's 24 now, works construction. Rosa's 22, she's in nursing school. And Danny just turned 18, just graduated high school." Tiana's voice was warm when she talked about them. "They used to drive me crazy when they were little, but I love them to pieces." "That's a lot of responsibility when you were young." It was what it was. "My mom did her best, but she couldn't be everywhere at once. Someone had to make sure homework got done and dinner got made." Ethan watched her adjust Jack's position so he could drink easier. "Did you ever want to do something else? Besides cleaning houses, I mean?" "Sure, lots of things. but life has a way of deciding for you sometimes. She smiled. Besides, I'm good at what I do. There's satisfaction in making things clean and organized. Jack finished his bottle and let out a small burp. Tiana laughed. Good job, little man. They moved to the living room, where Jack seemed content to lie on a blanket and look around. Ethan sat on the couch watching Tiana fold the burp cloth she'd washed that afternoon. Can I ask you something personal? He said. Depends what it is. Why did you really come back? You could have just said no. Tiana's hands stilled on the cloth she was folding. Because that little boy deserves to have someone who knows what they're doing help his daddy learn. And because, she paused, because I know what it's like to feel like you're in over your head with a baby. But you said you don't have kids. I don't. But when Rosa was born, my mum had complications. She was in the hospital for a week, and it was just me and this tiny baby. I was 14, and I was scared out of my mind. My neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, came over and taught me what to do, changed my whole life. How so? Made me realize I was good at taking care of people, that it was something I could do, even when I was scared. Tiana looked over at Jack, who was making happy baby noises on his blanket. Maybe I see a little bit of my 14-year-old self in you. Thank you, Ethan said quietly, for all of it. At 10 p.m., Tiana gathered her things to leave. Jack was sleeping peacefully in his bassinet, and the house felt calm. Same time tomorrow? Ethan asked. Same time tomorrow. But as Tiana reached for the door handle, they heard footsteps on the front porch. The doorbell rang. Ethan looked through the glass panel and saw his mother-in-law Ruth standing outside with several covered dishes balanced in her arms. Oh no, he muttered. What? Tiana asked. My mother-in-law. She doesn't usually come by this late. Ethan looked at Tiana, suddenly aware of how this might look. A woman leaving his house at 10 p.m. Just answer the door, Tiana said calmly. I'll grab my bag and head out. Ethan opened the door. Ruth, hi. This is unexpected. Ruth Hale was a well-dressed woman in her 50s who always looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. Even at 10 p.m., her grey hair was perfectly styled and her clothes were neat and unwrinkled. I brought dinner for the rest of the week, she said, stepping into the entryway. I was worried you weren't eating properly. Her eyes moved to Tiana, who was picking up her tote bag. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. This is Tiana, Ethan said. She's been helping me learn how to take care of Jack. Ruth's smile was polite but cool. How nice. Are you a nanny? House cleaner, actually, Tiana said evenly. Just helping Mr. Hale get through the first few weeks. I see. Ruth's tone suggested she saw quite a bit more than she was saying. Well, I should get going, Tiana said. Good night, Ethan. Mrs. Hale, Ruth supplied. Mrs. Hale, nice to meet you. Ruth nodded but didn't return the sentiment. After Tiana left, Ruth carried the covered dishes to the kitchen. She seems friendly. She's been a huge help, Ethan said, following her. Jack actually sleeps when she's here. Ethan, dear, I know you're struggling, but don't you think it might be better to hire someone more established? There are wonderful nanny agencies that can provide professional childcare. Tiana is professional. I'm sure she's very nice, but appearances matter, especially now that you're a single father. People will talk. Ethan felt a flash of irritation. Let them talk. Jack is finally sleeping, and I'm finally learning how to take care of him. That's what matters. Ruth's lips pressed into a thin line. Of course, dear, you know best. But her tone suggested she thought otherwise. After Ruth left, Ethan stood in his kitchen, feeling unsettled. He'd been so grateful for the peace and progress of the last 2 days, but Ruth's visit reminded him that his life wasn't private. People were watching, judging. He looked up at Jack's empty bassinet and tried to push the worry away. Jack was sleeping. The house was quiet. Tomorrow, Tiana would come back and help him get better at being a dad. That was all that mattered, right? The next afternoon, Ethan got a text from his house manager, Luis, who lived in the apartment above the garage and handled maintenance for the property. For your information, saw this on the neighborhood app. Thought you should know. Attached was a screenshot of a post in the local neighborhood group. The photo showed Ethan's living room window from the outside, with Tiana clearly visible inside, holding Jack. The caption read, "Interesting how quickly the millionaire found himself a live-in girlfriend after his wife's death. Some people move on fast." Ethan stared at the phone screen, his stomach sinking. There were already 12 comments, and he could imagine what they said without reading them. When Tiana arrived that evening, Ethan was distracted and tense. Jack picked up on his mood and was fussier than usual. "Everything okay?" Tiana asked as she took Jack and started her calming routine. "Yeah, fine." But Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the post, about Ruth's pointed comments, about neighbors apparently taking photos through his windows. "Ethan," Tiana said gently. "What's wrong?" He almost told her about the post, but something held him back. What would she think if she knew people were already gossiping about them? Would she leave? "Just tired," he said instead. "Bad night last night." Tiana didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. They went through the evening routine, but the easy conversation from previous nights was missing. Ethan was too distracted, too worried about what people might think if they saw Tiana's car in his driveway. When 10 o'clock came, Ethan walked Tiana to the door. "Tomorrow we should try taking Jack for a walk," she said. "Fresh air is good for babies, and it'll help you both get out of the house." "Maybe," Ethan said. "We'll see how he's doing." Tiana studied his face. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm fine. Really. Thanks for tonight." But as he watched her walk to her car, Ethan wondered if he was making a mistake. Maybe Ruth was right. Maybe appearances did matter. Maybe he was being selfish, asking Tiana to come back when it might cause problems for both of them. He closed the door and leaned against it, listening to Jack's peaceful breathing from the living room. For now, that was enough. Tomorrow's worries could wait until tomorrow. But tomorrow came faster than expected. The next day, as Ethan was getting ready for Tiana's evening visit, the doorbell rang. He opened it to find a woman about his age, with perfectly styled blonde hair and an expensive handbag. "Ethan," the woman said brightly. "Small world. I was just visiting Mum down the street and saw your address. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing." It took Ethan a moment to place her. Harper Vance. They'd dated briefly 3 years ago, before he'd met Sarah. It hadn't ended badly, but it hadn't been serious either. "The one and only," she said, stepping inside without being invited. "I heard about Sarah. I'm so sorry. And you have a baby now? Where is the little angel?" As if summoned, Jack started crying from his bassinet in the living room. "There he is," Harper cooed, rushing toward the sound. "Oh my goodness, he's precious." "What's his name?" "Jack," Ethan said, following her into the living room. He picked up his son and tried to calm him, but Jack was having one of his difficult moments. "Poor little guy," Harper said. "Here, let me try. I'm great with kids." She reached for Jack, but he only cried harder when she held him. Harper bounced him awkwardly, making shushing sounds that seemed to make everything worse. "Sometimes he's just fussy," Ethan said, taking Jack back. But his son continued to wail, and Ethan felt the familiar panic rising in his chest. That's when the doorbell rang again. Tiana. Ethan looked at the clock. 6 p.m. Exactly. She was always precisely on time. "Excuse me," he said to Harper, and went to answer the door with Jack still crying in his arms. "Hey," Tiana said when he opened the door. Then she heard the crying. "Rough day?" "He just started up. Come on in." Tiana stepped inside and immediately noticed Harper standing in the living room, looking slightly put out that her baby-calming efforts had failed. "Oh," Tiana said, "you have company. I can come back later." "No, it's fine," Ethan said quickly. "Harper, this is Tiana. She's been helping me with Jack." "Tiana, this is Harper. We used to date." Harper's eyes sharpened with interest as she looked Tiana up and down. "How nice. Are you a professional nanny? Where did you train?" "I'm not a nanny," Tiana said evenly. "I clean houses, but I'm helping Ethan learn baby care." "Oh," Harper said, and something in her tone made Ethan uncomfortable. "That's sweet." Jack's crying got louder. Without a word, Tiana moved toward Ethan and held out her arms. "May I?" Ethan passed Jack over, and within seconds, the crying stopped. Jack settled against Tiana's shoulder with a little sigh of contentment. Harper's mouth fell open. "How did you do that?" "Practice," Tiana said simply. "Well," Harper said after a moment, "I should let you work. Ethan, we should catch up soon. Maybe dinner, when things are more settled." "Maybe," Ethan said, but his attention was focused on Tiana and Jack. After Harper left, the house felt peaceful again. But Ethan noticed that Tiana was quieter than usual as they went through Jack's evening routine. "Everything okay?" he asked, as she showed him how to massage Jack's feet. "Fine," she said, but she didn't meet his eyes. They were interrupted again an hour later when Ruth arrived unexpectedly with a bag of heirloom baby clothes that had belonged to Sarah as a child. "I thought Jack should have these," she said, then noticed Tiana folding laundry at the kitchen table. "Oh, you're here again." "Just helping with the evening routine," Tiana said politely. Ruth pulled Ethan aside. "Ethan, I've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday, about getting professional help. I brought some information about a wonderful nanny agency." She handed him a glossy brochure. "These women have degrees and certifications, proper training." Ethan glanced at the brochure, then looked over at Tiana, who was pretending not to listen. "Ruth, I appreciate the thought, but things are working well right now." "Are they? Because people are starting to talk, Ethan." Mrs. Patterson saw. "This woman, here several nights this week. And there's been some discussion in the neighborhood group online." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What kind of discussion?" "Nothing malicious, of course, but people are concerned about appearances. You're a prominent figure in the community now, especially with your company's recent success. Image matters." Tiana's hands stilled on the towel she was folding. "I think you should consider more appropriate arrangements," Ruth continued. "For Jack's sake, if nothing else." After Ruth left, Ethan found Tiana packing up her things earlier than usual. "You don't have to leave yet," he said. "I think maybe I should," she replied quietly. "Your family has concerns, and I don't want to cause problems." "You're not causing problems. You're helping." Tiana turned to face him. "Ethan, be honest with me. Are you embarrassed to have me here?" "What? No, of course not." "Then why didn't you tell that Harper woman that I'm here because your son trusts me? Why didn't you tell your mother-in-law that Jack sleeps through the night now because of what we've accomplished together?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. She was right. He'd been apologetic, explanatory, like Tiana's presence was something that needed justification. "I didn't mean it like that," he said finally. "Maybe not, but that's how it came across." Tiana picked up her tote bag. "Look, I know how this works. I know what people see when they look at me. Young black woman going to a rich white man's house every evening. I've dealt with assumptions my whole life. I don't care what people think. Don't you?" Tiana's voice was gentle but firm. "Because it seemed like you cared quite a bit tonight." Ethan watched her walk toward the door and felt something important slipping away. "Tiana, wait." She paused at the door. "I like you, Ethan, and I love that little boy. But I won't be someone's secret. I won't be hidden away because it's convenient. You're not. Good night, Ethan." After she left, Ethan sat on his couch, holding the nanny agency brochure and looking around his quiet house. Jack was sleeping peacefully in his bassinet, more content than he'd been in the 3 weeks since he'd been born. But the peace felt fragile now. Tomorrow, Tiana might not come back. Tomorrow, he might have to start over with someone new, someone appropriate, who might not understand Jack the way Tiana did. Ethan set the brochure aside and picked up his phone. He wanted to text Tiana, an apology, an explanation, something. But what could he say? That he was sorry for caring what people thought? That he was sorry for not defending her when Harper made her snide comments? Instead, he just typed, "See you tomorrow at 6. The response came back 20 minutes later. "I'll be there." Ethan put down his phone and looked at his sleeping son. Whatever happened tomorrow, he knew one thing for certain. Jack was better with Tiana in their lives, and maybe, just maybe, so was he. But as he turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to get more complicated. The next morning came too early. Jack woke up at 6 a.m. crying harder than he had in days, and nothing Ethan tried seemed to work. The swaddling that had been successful before only made Jack angrier. The white noise app that usually helped just seemed to irritate him more. By the time Ethan's phone buzzed with a text at 8 a.m., he was sitting on the nursery floor holding his screaming son and feeling like a complete failure again. The text was from Tiana. "How's your morning going?" Ethan looked down at Jack's red, angry face and typed back, "Rough, really rough. I'm sorry about last night. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to yourself for letting other people make you doubt what's working." Before he could reply, another text came through. "Want me to come by for a few minutes before my other job? I have an hour free." "Yes, please," Ethan typed back immediately. 20 minutes later, Tiana knocked on the door. When Ethan answered with Jack still crying in his arms, she didn't say anything about their conversation the night before. She just held out her hands. "Let me try something different today," she said as Jack quieted against her shoulder. I think you need to learn skin-to-skin contact. Real skin-to-skin. What do you mean? Take off your shirt. Ethan hesitated. What? Trust me. Jack needs to feel your heart beating, needs to smell your skin. Babies bond through touch and scent, not just through feeding and diaper changes. Ethan pulled off his t-shirt, feeling self-conscious. Tiana gently transferred Jack to his chest, positioning the baby so his ear was pressed against Ethan's heart. Now just breathe, she said softly, slow and steady. Don't think about anything except being here with him. Jack squirmed for a moment, then settled. His tiny hand pressed against Ethan's collarbone, and his breathing started to match Ethan's rhythm. This feels... Ethan started, then stopped. His voice was thick with emotion. Different, right? Tiana sat down in the rocking chair next to where Ethan was standing. This is how he knows you're his daddy. Not because you can change his diaper perfectly or make his bottle the right temperature, because you're willing to be close to him. Ethan looked down at Jack's peaceful face and felt something shift inside his chest. For 3 weeks, he'd been trying to take care of Jack like he was a problem to be solved. But this felt like love, like connection. I've been so scared, he whispered. Of what? Of loving him too much, of losing him like I lost Sarah. Ethan's voice cracked. It felt safer to just focus on keeping him alive. Tiana was quiet for a long moment. But he's not Sarah, and loving him won't make you lose him. How do you know? Because love doesn't work that way. Love makes people stronger, not more fragile. Jack made a small, contented sound against Ethan's chest. For the first time since Sarah died, Ethan felt like maybe he could do this. Maybe he could be the dad Jack needed. Thank you, he said to Tiana, for showing me this. She smiled. You would have figured it out eventually. Sometimes we just need someone to give us permission to stop being afraid. They stayed like that for another 20 minutes, Jack sleeping peacefully on Ethan's chest, while Tiana rocked gently in the chair beside them. The morning sun came through the nursery window, and everything felt calm and right. When Tiana had to leave for her other job, she helped Ethan put Jack down for a nap without waking him. Same time tonight? She asked at the door. Same time tonight, Ethan confirmed, but this time he met her eyes when he said it. That evening, when Tiana arrived, Ethan was ready. He'd spent the afternoon practicing the skin-to-skin contact, and Jack had been calmer than he'd been since they came home from the hospital. How did it go? Tiana asked as she hung up her light jacket. Better, much better. Ethan picked up Jack from his bassinet. Want to see? He pulled off his shirt and settled Jack against his chest. Jack immediately relaxed, his little fist grabbing onto Ethan's skin. Look at that, Tiana said, her voice warm with approval. You're getting it. I practiced all afternoon. I think he likes it. Of course he likes it. You're his daddy. They moved to the kitchen, where Tiana had suggested they try feeding Jack while Ethan held him skin to skin. It was awkward at first, trying to hold a baby and a bottle while shirtless, but Jack latched on better than he ever had before. This is incredible, Ethan said as Jack drank contentedly. I can't believe the difference it makes. Babies know what they need, Tiana said, sitting across from them at the kitchen table. They just can't tell us in words. As Jack ate, they talked more easily than they had since the first day. Tiana told him about her family, how her brother Miguel was saving up to buy a house, how Rosa was top of her nursing school class, how Danny was deciding between community college and trade school. You're proud of them, Ethan observed. So proud. They all turned out good, despite everything. She smiled. Miguel's got his first baby on the way. I'm going to be an aunt. That's wonderful. You'll be great at it. I hope so. I've been practicing on your little guy. Jack finished his bottle and let out a satisfied burp against Ethan's chest. Both adults laughed. He's getting so much better at that, Ethan said. So are you. They moved to the living room, where Tiana showed Ethan how to do infant massage. It helps with digestion, she explained as she demonstrated on Jack's tiny legs, and it's more bonding time. Ethan watched carefully, then tried it himself. Jack seemed to love the gentle pressure on his feet and legs. I never knew babies needed so much touch, Ethan said. Most people don't. We think babies just need food and clean diapers, but they need connection just like everybody else. Tiana adjusted Jack's position on Ethan's lap. Maybe more, because they can't do anything for themselves. As the evening went on, Ethan found himself watching Tiana as much as he was learning from her. The way she moved around Jack with such natural confidence. The way she talked to the baby like he was a real person worth listening to, the way she made everything seem manageable instead of overwhelming. "Can I ask you something?" he said as they prepared Jack's bedtime bottle. "Sure. Why don't you have kids of your own? You're so good with them." Tiana was quiet for a moment, testing the bottle temperature on her wrist. "Never found the right person, I guess. And honestly, after raising my siblings, I wasn't in a hurry to start over with babies." "But you like them." "I love them. But liking something and wanting it for yourself are different things." She handed him the bottle. "What about you? Did you and Sarah always want kids?" Ethan's chest tightened. "Sarah did. She was so excited when we found out Jack was coming. She had everything planned out. The nursery, the schedule, what kind of parents we were going to be." "And you?" "I was terrified," he admitted. "I didn't know anything about babies. My parents died when I was in college, and I don't have siblings. Sarah was the one who read all the books, took the classes. I just figured I'd learn from her. But then she was gone, and it was just me and Jack, and I had no idea what I was doing." Tiana reached over and touched his arm gently. "You're doing fine now, only because of you. No, because you stopped being afraid to love him." Jack fell asleep easily that night, content and peaceful in his bassinet. As Tiana gathered her things to leave, she seemed more relaxed than she had the night before. "Tomorrow's Saturday," she said. "Want to try that walk in the park? Jack could use some fresh air." "I'd like that," Ethan said. "What time?" "How about after lunch? Say 2 o'clock? "Perfect." But as Tiana reached for the door, Ethan caught her hand. "Tiana," he said softly, "about last night. You were right. I was worried about what people thought, and I shouldn't have been. You're not someone to be ashamed of. You're—" He stopped, not sure how to finish the sentence. "I'm what?" she asked, her voice quiet. "You're the best thing that's happened to us since Jack was born." For a moment, they stood there in the entryway, her hand warm in his. The air between them felt charged, like something important was shifting. Then Jack made a soft sound from the living room, and the moment broke. "I should go," Tiana said, but she didn't pull her hand away immediately. "See you tomorrow." After she left, Ethan stood in his doorway watching her car disappear down the street. Something had changed tonight, something deeper than just learning how to take care of Jack. He was falling for her, and that terrified him almost as much as it thrilled him. The next day dawned sunny and warm, perfect for a walk. Ethan spent the morning getting ready, making sure he had everything they'd need: extra diapers, bottles, burp cloths, the stroller Sarah had picked out but they'd never used. When Tiana arrived at 2 p.m., she was wearing a simple sundress and sandals. She looked beautiful, and Ethan had to remind himself that this wasn't a date. This was just a walk in the park with a baby. "Ready for your first real outing?" she asked, peeking into the stroller where Jack was buckled in and looking around with wide eyes. "I think so. I packed probably too much stuff." "Better too much than too little," Tiana laughed. "Come on, let's go introduce this little guy to the world." The park was only 4 blocks away, but it felt like an adventure. Jack seemed fascinated by the moving trees and the sounds of other people walking and talking. He didn't cry once during the entire walk. "Look at him," Ethan said as they found a shady spot under a large oak tree. "He loves this. Fresh air and new sights. Good for both of you to get out of the house." They spread a blanket and sat with Jack between them. He was alert and happy, making little cooing sounds at the leaves moving overhead. "This is nice," Tiana said, leaning back on her hands. "Peaceful." "Yeah, it is." Ethan watched her face as she looked around the park. "Tiana, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I haven't felt this relaxed in. I can't remember how long, not since before Sarah got sick." "Tell me about her," Tiana said gently. "If you want to." Ethan was quiet for a moment, watching Jack grab at a dandelion Tiana had picked for him. "She was everything I wasn't. Organized, confident, social. She could walk into a room full of strangers and have 3 new friends by the time she left. Sounds like she was special." She was. But toward the end, Ethan's voice got quieter. The pregnancy was hard. High blood pressure, then preeclampsia. She was scared, and I didn't know how to help her. I kept thinking if I could just fix things, make them perfect, everything would be okay. But you couldn't fix it. No. And when she died, I felt like I'd failed at the most important thing in my life. Then Jack came home, and I was failing at that too. Tiana reached over and touched his hand. "You didn't fail, Sarah, and you're not failing Jack. Sometimes I feel guilty, Ethan admitted, for being happy, for laughing, for what? For caring about you the way I do. The words hung in the air between them. Jack made a happy burbling sound, oblivious to the weight of what his father had just said. Ethan, Tiana said softly, I know it's complicated. I know we barely know each other. I know there are a million reasons why this isn't a good idea, but I can't pretend I don't feel it. Feel what? That I'm falling for you. That when you're in my house, everything feels right in a way it hasn't for months. That Jack isn't the only one who calms down when you're around. Tiana was quiet for a long moment, looking down at Jack, who was trying to eat the dandelion. This is dangerous, she said finally. What is this? Us. Whatever this is becoming. She looked up at him. You're grieving and overwhelmed and grateful for help. I'm the first person who's made things easier, but that doesn't mean... It doesn't mean what? It doesn't mean you're really ready for this, or that you'll still feel this way when things get normal again. What if I am? What if I will? Then we have other problems, like the fact that your mother-in-law already doesn't approve of me, like the fact that your neighbors are taking pictures through your windows, like the fact that I clean houses for a living and I'm what? You know what you are, Ethan. You're successful and educated, and from a completely different world than mine. Jack started to fuss a little, and Tiana automatically reached for him, settling him against her shoulder. I don't care about any of that, Ethan said. Maybe you don't right now, but other people do. And eventually, that matters. A voice interrupted them before Ethan could respond. Well, small world. They both looked up to see Harper standing on the path in designer workout clothes, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. Harper, Ethan said, his stomach sinking. Hi. I was just finishing my run when I saw you two. Harper's eyes moved between Ethan and Tiana, taking in the blanket, the relaxed posture, the way Tiana was holding Jack. Having a nice afternoon? Just getting Jack some fresh air, Ethan said. How sweet. Harper's smile was bright and sharp. And Tiana, right? You're still helping with the baby? That's right, Tiana said evenly. It's so wonderful that Ethan found someone so dedicated to helping out. Not everyone would be willing to spend their weekends working. The comment landed like a small slap. Harper was making it clear that she saw this as work, not a personal outing. Actually, Ethan started, but Harper was already moving on. Ethan, I ran into your mother-in-law at the grocery store yesterday. She mentioned you're thinking about hiring a professional nanny. That's probably wise. Children need consistency and proper credentials, don't you think? Ethan felt Tiana go still beside him. I haven't decided anything yet, he said. Well, when you do, I'd love to help you interview candidates. I know several families who've used excellent agencies. Harper checked her expensive fitness watch. I should finish my run. Enjoy your afternoon. She jogged away, leaving awkwardness in her wake. I'm sorry about that, Ethan said immediately. Don't be. But Tiana's voice was cooler than it had been before. She's not wrong, though. About the professional nanny thing, Tiana, no, she's right. And so is your mother-in-law. Jack needs consistency, and I'm just temporary help. You're more than that. Am I? Tiana stood up and started gathering their things. Because it sounds like you've been having conversations about replacing me that I didn't know about. Ruth brought me some brochures, but I haven't. It's fine, Ethan. Really. This was always temporary. Jack started to fuss again, picking up on the tension between the adults. Tiana handed him to Ethan and finished packing up the blanket. Let's head back, she said. Jack's probably getting tired. The walk home was quiet and strained. When they reached Ethan's house, Tiana helped him get Jack inside and settled, but she seemed distant and professional. I should probably go, she said after Jack was sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. I have some things to take care of at home. Will you come back tonight for the evening routine? Tiana hesitated. Maybe we should take a break. Give you some time to think about what you really want. I know what I want. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're getting pressure from everyone around you to make different choices. I don't care what they think. Yes, you do. And you should. Jack's going to grow up in their world, not mine. You need to think about what's best for him long term. Ethan watched her gather her purse and jacket, feeling like everything good was slipping away from him. Tiana, please don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I'm just giving you space to figure out what you actually want without me confusing the situation. You're not confusing anything. You're the clearest thing in my life right now. She paused at the door. Then prove it. What do you mean? Figure out how to want me in your life without being ashamed of it. Figure out how to defend what we have when people question it. Figure out how to choose me when it's not easy. I will. I hope so. She opened the door, then looked back at him one more time. Take care of yourself, Ethan, and take care of Jack. After she left, Ethan sat on his couch, staring at the nanny agency brochures Ruth had left on his coffee table. Professional women with degrees and certifications, proper credentials and references, none of whom would love Jack the way Tiana did, none of whom would understand his needs the way she did, none of whom would make Ethan feel like maybe he could build a family again. Jack woke up an hour later crying, and for the first time in days, Ethan couldn't calm him down. The skin-to-skin contact helped a little, but not enough. The swaddling only worked for a few minutes. The white noise just seemed to make Jack more agitated. By 8 p.m., both Ethan and Jack were crying. Louise knocked on the door around 9 p.m. and found Ethan pacing the living room with Jack screaming in his arms. "Everything okay?" Louise asked, taking in the scene. "No," Ethan said honestly. "Nothing's okay. Where's Tiana?" "Gone. Probably for good." Louise was quiet for a moment. "Mind if I make some coffee? Looks like it's going to be a long night. I don't think coffee's going to fix this." "Maybe not, but it might help us think." As Louise moved around the kitchen making coffee, Jack's cries echoed through the house. Ethan tried everything he could remember Tiana teaching him, but nothing worked the same without her there. "You know what your problem is," Louise said, returning with 2 mugs of coffee. "Jack won't stop crying." "No. Your problem is you're trying to make everyone else happy instead of doing what's right for your family." Ethan looked down at Jack's red, angry face. "I don't know what's right anymore." "Sure you do. You know what works. You know what makes Jack happy. You know what makes you happy. The question is whether you're brave enough to choose it. It's not that simple, isn't it?" Louise sat down across from him. "That woman has been nothing but good for both of you. Jack sleeps when she's here. You smile when she's here. You're both better people when she's around. What else matters? What people think. What's best for Jack long term. Whether I'm making decisions based on grief and gratitude instead of real feelings. And what do you think? About your feelings, I mean." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, looking down at Jack, who was finally starting to calm down in his arms. "I think I'm falling in love with her," he said finally, "and that scares me almost as much as losing Sarah did." "Why?" "Because what if I'm wrong? What if this is just gratitude and loneliness? What if I hurt her? What if I hurt Jack? What if you don't? What if this is real, and you let it go because you're too scared to find out?" Jack had stopped crying and was looking up at Ethan with wide, serious eyes. "She told me to prove that I want her in my life without being ashamed of it," Ethan said. "So prove it. How? Start by stopping the conversations about replacing her. Stop letting other people make you feel like you need to justify what's working. Stop hiding." Ethan nodded slowly. "I need to call her. Probably not tonight. Give her some space, then show her you mean it with actions, not just words." Jack yawned and settled more comfortably against Ethan's chest. For the first time all evening, he seemed truly peaceful. "Thanks, Louise. Any time. And Ethan, for what it's worth, I think you'd be crazy to let her go." After Louise left, Ethan sat in his quiet living room holding Jack and thinking about everything that had happened over the past few days. The skin-to-skin contact that had changed everything. The easy conversation and growing connection with Tiana. The way she made him feel like maybe he could be happy again. And then Harper's pointed comments about professional nannies, Ruth's disapproval and concern about appearances, the neighborhood gossip and photo-taking. All of it felt small compared to the way Jack relaxed in Tiana's arms. All of it felt unimportant compared to the way Ethan felt when she smiled at him. But Tiana was right about one thing. If he wanted her in his life, he was going to have to be brave enough to choose her publicly. He was going to have to stop caring what other people thought and start caring about what was actually best for his family, his real family, which was starting to feel like it might include Tiana if he was brave enough to let it. Jack fell asleep against his chest, and Ethan made a decision. Tomorrow, he was going to stop hiding. Tomorrow, he was going to prove that he could choose love over fear. Tomorrow, he was going to fight for the woman who had taught him how to be Jack's father. But first, he had to get through the night. And for the first time in days, that felt manageable. Not easy, but manageable, because he knew what he was fighting for now. And that made all the difference. The next 3 days were the longest of Ethan's life. Jack seemed to sense that Tiana was gone. He cried more, slept less, and nothing Ethan did worked as well as it had when she was there to guide him. The skin-to-skin contact still helped, but Jack would calm down for 20 minutes, then start fussing again. Ethan barely slept. He barely ate. He kept picking up his phone to text Tiana, then putting it down again. What could he say? That he missed her? That Jack missed her? That the house felt empty and wrong without her there? All of that was true. But Luis was right. Words weren't going to fix this. He needed to show her that he was serious about choosing her, about building something real together. On Wednesday morning, Ruth called. "I spoke to the Harmony Nanny Agency," she said without preamble. "They have a wonderful woman available, immediately. Certified in infant care, CPR training, excellent references. Her name is Margaret, and she's worked with several prominent families in the area." Ethan stood in his kitchen holding Jack, who was fussing despite having just eaten. "Ruth, I appreciate you looking into it, but I've scheduled an interview for this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I know you're overwhelmed, dear, so I took the liberty of handling the initial screening. All you have to do is meet with her." "You scheduled an interview without asking me?" "Ethan, this has gone on long enough. That girl is sweet, I'm sure, but Jack needs professional care. And frankly, you need to think about your reputation. People are starting to talk. Let them talk." "You can't mean that. Your company's success has made you a public figure in this community. The way you handle your personal life reflects on your professional standing." Ethan felt anger rising in his chest. "My personal life is my business. Not when it affects Jack. That child deserves the best care possible, not some girl playing house. Tiana isn't playing house. She's the reason Jack finally sleeps through the night. She's the reason I learned how to be his father. Exactly my point. You've become dependent on her, and that's not healthy for anyone involved." Jack's fussing turned into full crying, as if he could sense the tension in Ethan's voice. "I have to go," Ethan said. "Jack needs me." "The interview is at 2, Ruth said firmly. "Don't disappoint Margaret. She's doing us a favor by coming on such short notice." After Ruth hung up, Ethan stood in his kitchen bouncing Jack and feeling trapped. Part of him wanted to cancel the interview, but a smaller part wondered if maybe Ruth was right. Maybe he had become too dependent on Tiana. Maybe he wasn't thinking clearly about what was best for Jack. But as he looked down at his son's unhappy face, he knew the truth. Jack had been thriving with Tiana there. They'd both been thriving. He spent the morning trying to calm Jack and thinking about what Luis had said. Stop letting other people make decisions for his family. Stop being ashamed of what was working. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Margaret was everything Ruth had promised. Mid-50s, professionally dressed, with a crisp manner and impressive credentials. She cooed over Jack appropriately, asked all the right questions about his schedule and needs, and explained her philosophy of structured infant care. "Consistency is key," she said, sitting primly on Ethan's couch with her hands folded. "Babies thrive with routine. Fixed feeding times, scheduled naps, minimal disruption to their environment." "Jack's actually been doing really well lately," Ethan said, holding his son, who was studying Margaret with serious eyes. "He's finally sleeping through the night. Wonderful. I'm sure we can maintain that with proper scheduling. I believe in evidence-based care practices and age-appropriate developmental activities." She was perfect on paper, experienced, professional, qualified, and Jack started crying the moment she reached for him. "Oh," Margaret said, holding Jack awkwardly as he wailed. "Sometimes it takes a few days for babies to adjust to new caregivers." But it wasn't just fussing. Jack was inconsolable in her arms, his cries sharp and distressed in a way Ethan hadn't heard in days. "Maybe I should take him back," Ethan said after a few minutes. No. It's important to establish authority early. He needs to learn that I'm his caregiver now." Jack's crying got louder, and Ethan felt every instinct in his body screaming to take his son back. "I really think—" "Mr. Hale, I understand you've had some informal help recently, but babies can sense uncertainty. Jack needs to know that I'm in charge of his care." Ethan stood up and took Jack from Margaret's arms. His son immediately began to calm down, hiccuping against Ethan's shoulder. "I think that's enough for today," Ethan said firmly. Margaret looked surprised. "Mr. Hale, if you hire me, there will be an adjustment period. It's perfectly normal for babies to prefer familiar caregivers at first." "I understand. I'll be in touch." After Margaret left, Ethan sat on his couch holding Jack and thinking about the difference between her and Tiana. Margaret had talked about Jack like he was a problem to be managed. Tiana talked to Jack like he was a person worth listening to. Margaret focused on schedules and routines. Tiana focused on what Jack actually needed in each moment. Margaret was qualified and professional. Tiana was loving and intuitive. The choice should have been obvious, but Ethan could already hear Ruth's voice in his head, talking about credentials and proper care and what people would think. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Danny, Tiana's friend. She gave me your number in case of emergency. Can you call me?" Ethan's heart jumped. Was something wrong with Tiana? He called the number immediately. "This is Ethan," he said when a woman answered. "Hi, thanks for calling back. I'm Danny Rivera. Tiana's been my friend since high school. Is she okay? Is something wrong?" "She's fine, physically, but she's been miserable for 3 days, and I'm tired of watching her pretend she's not." Ethan closed his eyes. "I've been miserable too." "Good. That means this is real for both of you. But miserable isn't enough, Ethan. She needs to know you're willing to fight for this." "I am. I want to. I just don't know how." Start by being honest about what you want. Stop letting other people make decisions for you, and stop treating her like she's something you need to apologize for. "I've never," haven't you? Every time someone questions her being in your life, you get defensive instead of proud. Every time someone suggests you need someone better, you don't shut it down completely. You hedge. Ethan thought about his conversations with Ruth, with Harper, even with the nanny agency woman. Danny was right. He'd been explaining and justifying instead of simply saying that Tiana belonged in his life. "What should I do?" he asked. "That's up to you. But whatever you do, you better mean it. Because if you break her heart, you'll have to deal with me." After Danny hung up, Ethan sat in his quiet house and thought about what he really wanted. Not what Ruth wanted, or what Harper thought was appropriate, or what some imaginary panel of neighbors might approve of. What did he want? He wanted Tiana in his life. He wanted Jack to have someone who loved him unconditionally. He wanted to build something real with a woman who made him feel alive again. He wanted to stop being afraid. By Thursday evening, Ethan had made his decision. He called Ruth and told her he wouldn't be hiring Margaret or anyone else from the nanny agency. "Ethan, you're not thinking clearly," Ruth said. "This girl has you confused. You're grateful to her, and that's natural. But, Ruth, stop. I need you to listen to me. Tiana isn't going anywhere. She's part of Jack's life, and she's part of mine. If you want to be in our lives too, you need to accept that. I just want what's best for Jack. So do I. And what's best for Jack is having people around him who love him. Tiana loves him. She loves us both. That's not confusion or gratitude. That's the best thing that's happened to us since Sarah died." Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "Are you saying you're romantically involved with this woman?" "I'm saying I care about her deeply, and I'm tired of pretending I don't." "Ethan, I have to go. I need to call Tiana." But when Ethan tried calling Tiana, it went straight to voicemail. He tried texting, but got no response. Friday morning, he showed up at her apartment. Tiana lived in a small complex about 20 minutes from his house. Her apartment was on the second floor, and Ethan could hear music playing softly through the door when he knocked. She opened it wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked beautiful and tired and surprised to see him. "Ethan, what are you doing here? Where's Jack?" "Luis is watching him for an hour. We need to talk." "I don't think. Please, just give me 5 minutes." She hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. Her apartment was small but cozy, decorated in soft blues and greens. There were family photos on every surface, her siblings at various ages, her parents at their wedding, group shots from birthdays and holidays. "Nice place," Ethan said. "It's not much, but it's home." Tiana sat on her couch, leaving space between them. "What did you want to talk about?" "I interviewed a nanny yesterday, the professional kind, with all the certifications Ruth thought were so important." Tiana's face carefully neutral. "How did it go?" "Terrible. Jack hated her. I hated her. She talked about him like he was a project to be managed instead of a person to be loved. There are other agencies, other candidates. I don't want other candidates. I want you." "Ethan, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I fired the agency. I told Ruth that you're part of our lives and she needs to accept that. I'm done explaining and justifying and apologizing for caring about you." Tiana was quiet, studying his face. "I know I messed up," Ethan continued. "I know I let other people make me doubt what we have. But I'm not confused or grateful or making decisions based on grief. I'm falling in love with you, and that terrifies me. But it's also the best thing that's happened to me since Sarah died. And when people talk, when your business associates think you're making poor choices, when Jack gets older and kids at school say things about his family, then I'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. Together." Tiana looked down at her hands. "You say that now, but you don't know what it's really like. You don't know what it's like to walk into a room and feel people making assumptions about you before you even speak. You're right. I don't know. But I want to learn. I want to stand beside you when it happens instead of behind you. What if it's too hard? What if the pressure is too much?" Ethan moved closer to her on the couch. "Then it's too hard. But we'll figure it out together. I'd rather struggle with you than succeed without you." Tiana looked up at him, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. Hope fighting with fear, love fighting with practical concerns. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "So am I, but I'm more scared of losing you. Your mother-in-law will never accept me. She might, given time, and if she doesn't, that's her choice. But it's not going to change mine. People are going to say you're moving on too fast, that I'm taking advantage of you. Let them say it. I know the truth. Jack knows the truth. You know the truth." Tiana was quiet for a long moment, looking around her small living room like she was weighing everything she might be giving up against everything she might be gaining. "If we do this," she said finally, "if we really try this, it has to be real. Not just when it's convenient, not just when it's easy. I know, and I won't be hidden. I won't be your secret or your shame. I don't want you to be. And Jack comes first, always. Whatever's happening between us, his needs come first." "Absolutely." She reached over and took his hand. "Okay, okay, okay, let's try this. Let's see if we can build something real." Ethan felt relief and joy and terror all at once. "Thank you for giving us a chance. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be complicated. I know. But good things usually are." Tiana smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "We should probably go get Jack. I bet he's driving Luis crazy." "Probably. He's been fussy all week without you. Poor baby. We'll have to make it up to him." As they drove back to Ethan's house together, Tiana was quiet but not distant. She seemed thoughtful, like she was already planning how to navigate the challenges ahead. "There's something I need to tell you," she said as they pulled into his driveway. "What?" "Ruth called me yesterday." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "She offered me money to stop seeing you and Jack. Quite a bit of money, actually." "She did what?" "She thinks I'm taking advantage of your grief. She thinks I'm after your money, or your status, or something." Ethan felt anger rising in his chest, but Tiana put her hand on his arm. "I turned her down, obviously. But Ethan, you need to understand what we're up against. She's not going to make this easy. I'll talk to her." "No, let me handle it. Woman to woman. If we're going to do this, I need to establish that I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not intimidated." They found Luis in the living room bouncing a fussy Jack, who immediately calmed down when he saw Tiana. "There's my boy," she said softly, taking Jack into her arms. He settled against her shoulder with a contented sigh. "He's been asking for you all week," Luis said with a grin. "Well, not in words, but you know what I mean. I missed him too," Tiana said, pressing a gentle kiss to Jack's head. Watching her hold his son, seeing the way Jack relaxed completely in her arms, Ethan felt certain he'd made the right choice. Whatever challenges they faced, this was worth fighting for. That evening, they fell back into their routine easily. Bath time, feeding, the gentle rhythm they'd established before everything got complicated. But this time, there was something different in the air. A sense of possibility, of moving towards something instead of just maintaining what they had. After Jack was asleep, they sat on the couch together, closer than they'd ever been before. "So what happens now?" Tiana asked. "Now we figure it out as we go. Starting tomorrow." "What's tomorrow?" "Ruth is coming over for lunch. I told her I wanted her to really get to know you, not just make assumptions about you." Tiana raised an eyebrow. "And you think she'll agree to that?" "She'll agree if she wants to be part of Jack's life, because you're part of his life now, and that's not changing. You seem very confident about that." "I am confident about it. For the first time in months, I'm confident about something." Tiana leaned against his shoulder. I hope you're right. I am right. And even if it's hard sometimes, even if people don't understand, even if we have to figure out a lot of things as we go, it's going to be worth it. How do you know? Ethan looked down at her, this woman who had walked into his chaotic life and somehow made everything make sense again. Because when you hold Jack, he knows he's safe. When you're in this house, it feels like home. When you look at me, I feel like maybe I can be happy again. He paused. That's how I know. Tiana tilted her face up toward his, and this time, when he leaned down to kiss her, neither of them pulled away. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. It tasted like hope and felt like coming home. When they broke apart, Tiana smiled. Okay, I'm convinced. Good, because I'm not letting you go again. Even when it gets complicated? Especially when it gets complicated. Outside, the neighborhood settled into quiet evening routines. Inside, Ethan held Tiana close and listened to Jack's peaceful breathing from the bassinet across the room. For the first time since Sarah died, Ethan could imagine a future. Not the future he'd planned before, but a different one. A better one. A future where Jack grew up surrounded by love, where Tiana's laugh filled the house every day, where they built something new and beautiful together. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and conflicts and people who didn't understand their choices. But sitting there with Tiana in his arms and his son sleeping peacefully nearby, Ethan felt ready to face whatever came next, because he wasn't facing it alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The next day would bring Ruth's visit and their first real test as a couple. But tonight, they were just three people who belonged together, finally brave enough to admit it. That was enough for now. More than enough. Saturday morning came with sunshine streaming through the kitchen windows and Jack babbling happily in his high chair. Tiana had arrived early to help prepare lunch for Ruth's visit, and the house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for weeks. You sure you're ready for this? Ethan asked as he watched Tiana chop vegetables for a salad. As ready as I'll ever be, she smiled at him over the cutting board. Besides, we have to start somewhere. Right? Jack banged his toy against his tray and made a happy shrieking sound. At least someone's excited about lunch, Ethan said. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. Ruth had always been punctual. Ethan answered the door to find his mother-in-law standing on the porch with a covered casserole dish and a carefully neutral expression. Ruth, he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. Thanks for coming. Thank you for inviting me, she said formally. Her eyes moved past him into the house, where she could see Tiana setting the table. Come in. Lunch is almost ready. Ruth stepped inside and handed Ethan the casserole dish. Green bean almondine, Sarah's favorite. The comment hung in the air for a moment. A reminder of who used to belong in this house, who used to set this table. That's thoughtful, Tiana said, appearing in the doorway with Jack on her hip. I'm sure it was one of her specialties. Ruth looked at Tiana holding Jack, and something shifted in her expression. Jack was reaching for her earring, completely comfortable and content. Hello, Mrs. Hale, Tiana continued. I'm glad we have a chance to really talk. Yes, Ruth said carefully. So am I. They moved to the dining room, where Tiana had set the table with Sarah's good dishes. It was a gesture of respect that Ruth clearly noticed. The table looks lovely, Ruth said as they sat down. Tiana thought you'd want to use Sarah's china, Ethan said. She was right. They served the food in careful politeness, Jack providing entertainment from his high chair with enthusiastic attempts to feed himself mashed sweet potato. He's gotten so big, Ruth said, watching Jack with genuine warmth. And he seems very content. He's been sleeping through the night for 2 weeks now, Ethan said. 8 full hours. That's wonderful. Most babies his age are still waking up multiple times. Tiana taught me about skin-to-skin contact, Ethan continued, and how to read his cues better. I was trying so hard to follow a schedule that I wasn't paying attention to what Jack actually needed. Ruth's eyes moved to Tiana. You have experience with infants? I helped raise my 3 younger siblings, Tiana said, so I've been around babies most of my life. Not professional training, but a lot of hands-on experience. And you work as a house cleaner? I do. I have my own small business. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work, and it pays the bills. Ruth nodded slowly. What are your intentions here, with Ethan and Jack? The question was direct and challenging, but Tiana met it head-on. I care about them both deeply, she said. Jack is a special little boy, and Ethan is a good man who's been through something terrible. I want to help them both heal and be happy. And romantically? Ethan started to speak, but Tiana gently touched his arm. Romantically, we're figuring it out as we go. We care about each other, but our first priority is always going to be what's best for Jack. I see. Ruth was quiet for a moment, cutting her chicken with precise movements. I'll be honest with you, Tiana. I'm concerned about this arrangement. I understand your concerns, Tiana said calmly. You love Jack, and you want what's best for him. So do I. Do you? Or do you see an opportunity? The question was sharp, but Tiana didn't flinch. Mrs. Hale, if I wanted an opportunity, there are easier ways to get it than falling in love with a grieving widower and his colicky baby. This isn't the easy path for anyone. Ruth looked surprised by the direct response. I turned down your offer, Tiana continued quietly. The money you offered me to leave. I turned it down not because it wasn't enough, but because no amount of money is worth walking away from people you love. Ethan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What offer? I called Tiana yesterday, Ruth said, having the grace to look embarrassed. I thought perhaps she was motivated by financial gain. You offered her money to leave us? Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet. I was protecting you, both of you. Sometimes grief makes us vulnerable to what? To kindness? To love? To someone who actually helps instead of just judging? Jack seemed to sense the tension and started to fuss. Without thinking, both Ruth and Tiana reached for him at the same time, then stopped. May I? Ruth asked. Tiana nodded and carefully passed Jack to his grandmother. Ruth settled him against her shoulder, and he calmed down immediately. He's gotten so much stronger, Ruth said, her voice softer now. More alert. He loves people, Tiana said. He's going to be very social as he gets older. Like Sarah, Ruth said quietly. She could make friends with anyone. They sat in silence for a moment, Ruth holding Jack, everyone thinking about the woman who wasn't there. I miss her, Ruth said finally. Every day, I miss her. So do I, Ethan said. But I can't live in that missing forever. Jack can't grow up in that missing. I know. I want him to remember her, to know who she was. He will, Tiana said gently. We'll make sure of that. She should be part of his story. Ruth looked at Tiana with something that might have been the beginning of respect. You would do that? Help him know about his mother? Of course. She's part of who he is. That's important. Jack reached up and grabbed Ruth's necklace, the same way he did with Tiana's earrings. Ruth smiled despite herself. He's definitely got strong hands, she said. Strong everything, Ethan said. He's going to be a force of nature, just like his parents. Both of them, Ruth said, looking at Tiana meaningfully. The comment hung in the air, and Tiana looked surprised. I may not understand this situation, Ruth continued slowly, and I may have concerns about how quickly things have moved, but I can see that Jack is thriving, and I can see that you both love him. We do, Ethan said. Then perhaps. Ruth paused, clearly struggling with her words. Perhaps I owe you an apology, Tiana. I made assumptions about your character and your motives. That was unfair. Thank you, Tiana said quietly. That means a lot. I still have concerns, Ruth continued, about appearances, about the challenges you'll face as a couple, about what people will say. People are always going to talk, Ethan said. The question is whether we let that control our choices. You're right. And perhaps I've been too concerned with what other people think instead of focusing on what's actually happening in front of me. Jack chose that moment to spit up on Ruth's blouse, breaking the tension in the room. Oh no, Tiana said, jumping up. I'll get a cloth. It's fine, Ruth said, laughing despite herself. This is what grandmothers are for. As Tiana helped clean up the mess, Ruth watched the way she moved around Jack with natural confidence, the way she anticipated his needs without thinking about it. How long have you been helping with him? Ruth asked. About 3 weeks now, Tiana said. Since he was 2 weeks old. So you've been here for most of his life. I suppose I have. Ruth was quiet for a moment, looking down at Jack, who was now contentedly playing with her buttons. Sarah would have liked you, she said finally. Both Ethan and Tiana stared at her. What? Ruth said, noticing their expressions. Sarah always said the most important thing was for Jack to be surrounded by people who loved him unconditionally. She didn't care about credentials or backgrounds. She cared about hearts. Tiana's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for saying that. I'm saying it because it's true. Ruth looked around the table. This isn't what I expected for Jack's family, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe what I expected was too small. After lunch, They moved to the living room, where Jack played on a blanket, while the adults talked more easily than they had in weeks. "There's something I want to discuss with both of you," Ruth said as Jack grabbed at a soft toy. "I've been thinking about Jack's naming ceremony." Ethan looked confused. "What naming ceremony?" Sarah wanted to have a small gathering when Jack was a few months old, to officially introduce him to family and friends. She planned it all out before. Ruth's voice trailed off. "She never mentioned it to me," Ethan said. "It was going to be a surprise, a celebration of his life and his place in the family." Ruth looked at Tiana. "I think we should still do it, but I think Tiana should be included, officially." "What do you mean?" Tiana asked. "I mean she should be in the family photos. She should be introduced as part of Jack's inner circle. She should be acknowledged for the role she's played in his life." Ethan felt something warm and hopeful bloom in his chest. "Ruth, are you sure? I'm sure that Jack deserves to have everyone who loves him celebrated, and I'm sure that Sarah would want that too." 2 weeks later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Ethan's townhouse was filled with the quiet murmur of conversation and the gentle clink of coffee cups. The naming ceremony was small, just Ruth, Luis, Danny, Ethan's business partner Mike, and a few close neighbors. Tiana had been nervous all morning, but Ethan could see her relaxing as people welcomed her warmly. Mrs. Chen from next door complimented her on how healthy Jack looked. Mike's wife asked about her business and mentioned needing a reliable house cleaner. Jack, dressed in a tiny white outfit that had belonged to his father, was passed from person to person like the treasure he was. When it came time for the formal part of the ceremony, Ethan stood up with Jack in his arms. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he said. "Sarah planned this celebration because she wanted Jack to know from the very beginning that he was surrounded by love. She couldn't be here to see it, but I know she would be proud of the family we've built around him." He looked around the room, his eyes settling on Tiana, who was standing near the kitchen doorway. "Jack has been blessed with extraordinary care from someone very special. Tiana Brooks came into our lives when we needed her most, and she didn't just teach me how to be Jack's father, she taught me how to open my heart again." He held out his hand, and Tiana walked over to stand beside him. "I want everyone to know that Tiana isn't just helping us temporarily. She's family. She's the person who taught Jack that he was safe, who taught me that I could love again, and who showed us both what home feels like." Jack reached for Tiana from his father's arms, and she took him with a radiant smile. "Would you like to say anything?" Ethan asked her softly. Tiana looked around the room at all the faces watching her with warmth and acceptance. "I just want to say that this little boy has changed my life completely," she said. "I came here to clean a house, and instead I found a family. Jack, you are the sweetest, strongest, most amazing baby, and watching you grow has been the greatest privilege of my life." She looked at Ethan, her eyes bright with tears. "And Ethan, thank you for being brave enough to let me love you both." Ruth stepped forward with a camera. "I think we need a family photo," she said, "all of us together." As they gathered around Ethan, Tiana, and Jack, Ruth whispered to Tiana, "Welcome to the family, dear." The photo that Ruth took that day would sit on the mantel for years to come. In it, Jack is reaching for the camera with chubby hands. Ethan is smiling more genuinely than he had in months, and Tiana is looking at both of them like she's watching a miracle unfold. It's a picture of a family that didn't look like anything anyone had planned, but looked exactly like love. 3 months later, Tiana moved into the guest room, officially becoming Jack's full-time caregiver while they continued to look for a long-term nanny together. But somehow, the interviews always ended with them deciding that what they had was working perfectly. 6 months later, Tiana's house cleaning business had expanded to include 3 other women, and she was managing high-end clients throughout the city. Ruth had recommended her to several friends. 8 months later, Ethan proposed in the nursery where their love story had begun, with Jack playing at their feet and the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. A year later, they were married in Ruth's garden, with Jack toddling between them in a tiny tuxedo, carrying rings tied to a ribbon around his wrist. But that first day, sitting in the townhouse living room after everyone had gone home, was when they really became a family. "So," Tiana said, curled up next to Ethan on the couch with Jack sleeping between them, "how do you think it went?" "I think it was perfect," Ethan said. "Sarah would have loved it." "You think so?" "I know so. She would have loved seeing Jack surrounded by so much love. She would have loved seeing him happy and healthy and safe. And she would have loved seeing you smile again," Tiana said softly. Maybe, but mostly, I think she would have loved you. Jack stirred in his sleep, his tiny hand reaching out to grab Ethan's finger while his head rested against Tiana's arm. Look at him, Tiana whispered. He's got both of us. We've all got each other, Ethan said. That's what matters. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening routines. Inside, three people who had found each other in the most unexpected way settled into their own routine of love and laughter and the gentle chaos of family life. Jack woke up an hour later, not crying but cooing softly, ready for his evening feeding. Tiana warmed his bottle while Ethan changed his diaper, both of them moving around each other in the practiced dance of parents who knew their roles and trusted each other completely. You know what I love most about this? Tiana said as she settled into the rocking chair to feed Jack. What? He's never going to remember a time when we weren't together. To him, this will just be normal, a mama and a daddy who love him and each other. Ethan sat on the arm of the chair and put his hand on her shoulder, watching his son drink his bottle with the same contentment he'd shown that very first day when Tiana had held him. I used to be so scared of the future, Ethan said. After Sarah died, I couldn't imagine anything good ever happening again. And now? Now I can't wait to see what comes next. All of it. The good days and the hard days and everything in between. Jack finished his bottle and settled against Tiana's shoulder for burping. The house was quiet, except for the soft sounds of a baby being loved. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. For what? For saving us, both of us. I didn't save anyone, Tiana said. We saved each other. And as Jack drifted off to sleep in the arms of the woman who would love him as fiercely as any mother ever could, Ethan knew she was right. They had saved each other, all three of them. The house that had once been full of crying was now full of laughter. The man who had once been too afraid to love was now brave enough to build a future. The woman who had once protected her heart so carefully had opened it wide enough for a whole family. And the baby who had started it all slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged, in a house full of love, with parents who chose each other and him every single day. It wasn't the family any of them had planned, but it was the family they were meant to be, and it was perfect.